Welcome to this very special International Women's Day 2026 episode of The Juggle is Real. I'm Andryanna, and I'm really glad you tuned in. This year, we are exploring a theme that feels, I think, both timely and necessary, building what did not exist, because so many women don't just participate in systems, we quietly redesign them in work, in care, in community. We see what's missing and we feel what isn't working. And instead of waiting for permission, we build. And today I am joined by 5 women who have each built something that didn't previously exist or have reshaped something that wasn't working. I am truly honored to be speaking with the following women. Alicia Woods is the founder of CoverGals, a Canadian workwear company transforming personal protective equipment, you might know of it as PPE, for women in industrial and skilled trades. After experiencing firsthand the frustration of underground mining gear not designed for women, she turned that gap into innovation, creating inclusive, safety-driven workwear that has reshaped expectations across the industry. Also with us is Sherry Tomczyk. She's the founder of Plan A Long-Term Care Staffing and StaffStat, which are companies created to address critical workforce challenges in healthcare. She worked as a registered nurse and witnessed staffing shortages firsthand. I think we hear about it all the time in the news. And Sherry built systems that support both patient care and staff well-being across Canada. Sabrina Grossi is also joining us. She is the Director of Operations at 363 York Car and Social Club, a luxury venue here in Sudbury, Ontario that has evolved into a vibrant community hub. With a background in advocacy and clinical services, she brings a people-first lens to leadership, creating spaces centered on connection, hospitality, and belonging. Another incredible force joining us is Shannon Bubalo. She is the leader of the Bubalo Group with Remax Crown, bringing big market luxury real estate experience back to Northern Ontario. She has a background in custom builds, renovations, and investment-ready strategy, and she blends design, business, and long-term value creation, helping families build not just homes, but stability and wealth in real estate. And finally, we have Haley Hasty, who is the founder and CEO of The Social Soulpreneur, a creative marketing agency focused on strategy-led, authentic brand building. Raised by an entrepreneur and now a mother herself, Haley helps businesses find visibility and voice in a crowded digital world, building connection over noise. Together, these incredible women represent leadership across industries, care systems, hospitality, real estate, and digital entrepreneurship. And today we're exploring what it takes to build something that didn't previously exist, the invisible labor behind visible impact, how women carry both work and care, and how leadership rooted in generosity strengthens entire systems. Let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
I am now sitting in a call with some of the most incredible women, and I'm just so inspired in reading your bios and learning more about you. And I do know some of you a little bit. But what really has stood out to me now that we're chatting is that in learning about you, none of you had waited for perfect conditions. You saw friction, you saw gaps, and you saw what wasn't working, but you decided to build something anyway or fix something anyway. And so you're not just building businesses, you're building incredible infrastructure, safety, belonging, opportunity for so many, and visibility, especially for women. And that's not small work. So to begin today, I want to start with kind of how you saw the gap in the industry, in the places you were working. And I'll start with you, Alicia, because with Cover Gals, you built something that did not exist in your industry. And it sounds wild. Like it just sounds wild to me being in 2026 and thinking how they didn't have personal protective equipment for women in various industries, in mining, in construction, in all of these industries. What was the moment that you realized the system wasn't built with women in mind, and what pushed you to create something different instead of just going the normal route, which was adapting and using duct tape and trying to fix your own equipment and what you were wearing? When did you see that gap, and why did you decide to create something?
You know what? I think for me, growing up in the mining industry, I actually always thought it was a place for me, right? You know, my dad, my grandfather, my uncles always included me in the shop. It wasn't until 2000 that I actually went to the local safety supply store to actually get geared up for that first trip underground that I was, quickly realized it was not made for me. There was absolutely nothing for women. So I bought the smallest that I could find. And you're right, you fold things up, you tuck things in, you stuff things at the end of your work boots to make it work. And I remember getting to one of LA's properties the next day and going underground. And I stepped off the cage and I said to my male colleagues, if I have to go to the washroom today, where do I go? And they all started to laugh. They pointed to the end of a very dark drift. And I was like, this is not happening today. So I actually never drank anything for the next 10 years. I just refused to actually take it off. Fast forward, summer 2011, got stuck underground, consumed 3 bottles of water, faced a porta potty with no door in the middle of a high traffic drift, and turning my light off, and I can hear things falling on the ground. I'm not trying to touch anything. And I got back to the station and I sat on the bench and I said to the men around me, because there was no women, I am never wearing your coveralls again. And so that's really kind of that moment where I decided to make certainly my own personal change.
That's incredible. And now, Sherry, you saw something similar, but in healthcare. And I was just thinking because, we often hear about shortages, especially in hospitals, in retirement facilities, and nursing care facilities, nursing shortages. And you saw that these shortages are often discussed in numbers. But you also saw the human cost, which I think is probably more important than the numbers piece. What did you witness that made inaction impossible for you in starting Plan A and Staffstat?
That's a great question. Well, my background was nursing. So I started my career as a nurse 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, and I was really excited to do that. I graduated with honors. I was just really excited to be a great nurse. I was a healthy, excited nurse. And when I got into healthcare and I got my first job in healthcare, and I'm sure you have all heard horror stories, it really wasn't about giving care. It was a lot about running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and there was no way that I was looking after my own self care. So burnout became a quick reality in my job. So what happened to me was really, when I was at that stage in my life where working overtime really wasn't a big deal. I liked money. I liked to, I wasn't old. I was young, and I found out I was having my daughter, and that's when I realized how burned out I actually was. Like, think I probably worked every day from the time I had become a nurse until the time I found out I was pregnant. And it was only when it was time to come back to work that I realized that I had been so impacted by this burnout. And when it came time to go back to work, I'd have twitches in my eyes. And so I first decided to create my first company, Plan A, which, resulted in me doing the same things that created burnout in me. I was calling nurses all hours of the night. I was calling them first thing in the morning. Can you work? Can you work? If you can't work, I don't have anybody. And that's the same stuff that led to my burnout. And that's when the magic happened in our company with our technology. I was like, there has got to be a better way to do this. StaffStat is now a 12-year-old app. It's a human resources hub where people can see shifts, where communication happens, and where we can measure engagement, so we can make sure that not only we're getting our shifts covered, but that we're not burning people out, that we can create culture that way. So it was one of those aha moments. There's got to be a better way to do this.
I love how motherhood helped open your eyes to this broader issue and gave you a new perspective and a new lease to support so many women, so many families, and like the whole country now is being so supported, which I'm so grateful for. I do want to turn the table a little bit to talk about community, to talk about hospitality, and something that is just, I think, so interesting to me. And so, Sabrina, I would love to know, like, you helped transform this space, and I was looking at photos. I've actually never been to 363. I have to go now. But
Yes,
you
you do.
created this space into something that was more than it was originally designed for. I would love to know, like, what does it mean to build belonging intentionally, and how did this come about for you?
Well, I can't take credit for the idea itself. That belongs with my husband. But certainly, when we looked at the space, we saw that there was a lot of potential to build a car club, and building it intentionally directly related to the origination of car clubs. And we it kind of started as something that was unique, and it was positioned for car enthusiasts, and then it evolved now into more of a community driven organization that focuses mainly on preservation and social activity. We also hope to create a focused and inclusive environment for everyone, and not just for our members, but for the community in and of itself. And then so that they can, feel connected and feel supported, and offer opportunities such as networking and events, trade shows. And we'd like to build community by fostering common goals among the members, but also empowerment and entrepreneurship for those that have a passion for cars.
So cool. And I'm just like, I think it's incredible how having that intention to bring about something that works not just for the primary audience of the car enthusiasts, but is really bringing community together is such something so beautiful. Another thing that I think is so beautiful when we're talking about building communities is real estate. And having just moved a few months ago, I can say that real estate can look really transactional from the outside, but there is so much more to it. And there's so much nuance in those small details that can be so impactful. So I'll bring this to Shannon. Where did you see room to bring in more humanity, more strategy, and long term thinking into the process with you and the team at Bublo Group?
So I love this question because from the outside, I can understand how real estate does look so transactional. You list the house, you negotiate the deal, you get it done, you close it. And from there, it's, the relationship in some people's eyes is complete. However, for most people, it's one of the most emotional and financial significant decisions of their lives. It's not just a transaction, it's a major life shift, right? And early on in my career, I realized that if we only focus on the deal, we're missing the biggest picture. A home affects how you live every single day, how you raise your children, how you build wealth, how you host holidays. And that deserves more than just a sign here. And a transactional approach. So I've built my team and the Bubalo Group to be very relationship driven. We're here for the long haul. We don't look at clients as a one-time transaction, but more of a relationship that's built over a number of years. We're there to help you make decisions, whether it's a renovation, whether it's wealth building. It just goes so far beyond just a transaction.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, we've bugged our real estate agent on more than one occasion since having moved in, and it's wonderful to see how people like you and your team of all women, I will say, can make that process more seamless, especially in an industry that can seem quite complex and very saturated. Another space that can be really loud and crowded is the online space. And Haley, I would love to point this to you because you've changed how you're working with your clients and how you're seeing online spaces. Where did you see brands, especially women led brands, struggling to be seen authentically? And what are you doing to support them that is different from most marketing and advertising spaces?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really, really great question. When I started and created TSS, the vision was always not to just start a marketing agency, but to create and build a space that I haven't experienced before. I grew up watching my mom. She was a single mom entrepreneur, and she really dominated in the sales and fitness industry, which at the time, especially, was heavily male dominated. She was strong and driven and respected, but I saw firsthand how hard she had to work to be taken seriously. So yeah, when I created or entered the marketing space and started working closely, specifically with women led brands, I recognized something that felt really familiar. And that was that these women who were brilliant in their fields, whether it be real estate, finance, healthcare, art, entrepreneurship. But when it came to like marketing their business and being online, they were cautious and measured and sometimes even muted. And it wasn't that they lacked expertise, but it was because visibility is vulnerable. I saw women who were, instead of owning their authority, they were just over educating and playing it safe rather than like claiming their spot and their presence in their field. Or even if they were showing up consistently, they weren't doing it with confidence. So the gap wasn't necessarily strategy, but it was safety and providing a space for clients to feel like they can feel confident enough to say what they actually want to say. And, it's our job to not just help clients post more, but really showcase their business in its most authentic form.
So important in today's society. And I think we can all really relate to that. I think we've all had those moments where we've been a little afraid to say what we really mean to say. And the more we show up authentically, especially in this beautiful virtual spaces that we're all in, I think it just impacts, everything that we're doing so much. I'd like to go one layer deeper, and I want to talk about the invisible work that we are all doing, because we often are celebrating outcomes, but not the visible labor behind them. And I want to start with Sherry here. In healthcare, especially, so much of the emotional load is invisible. What is that invisible work behind building sustainable systems? And what are you doing to support the people that you are helping?
Well, I think that as a leader in the healthcare space, the invisible work behind building systems. I mean, we're all dealing with it in different areas, in different sectors. And I really think it starts with um, caring for people. Like we have to start getting back to caring for ourselves so we can take care of the people under our leadership. And then what happens is they take care of your customers, your clients, your everything else. And I think it nowadays, it starts with creating a workplace that the next generation is interested in, like really focusing if we want to build sustainable systems. And I'm thinking about my own business, creating growth and those opportunities, is that we can't build the same company that our parents wanted. Our parents wanted to work their way to the top. They wanted dental and they wanted all of these benefits. And it's not to say that eventually that's not what the next generation wants, but what they really want is purpose. Same thing we want, guys: purpose, freedom, flexibility to do our job, and recognition for work well done. And I think if we really want to start, you know, attracting and building something like that, we have to get back to caring for the people. We're in a society where we're all like this, kind of hearing what people say, kind of caring. But if we're not going to genuinely care for the people, your teams under your leadership, we're not going to go very far.
It definitely starts at the top. And so I appreciate how you're supporting so many people that's this way. Another area where I feel like there's so much invisible work is about building inclusive products and creating something that didn't exist. So Alicia, I'll point this to you. What is it that people are not seeing about building inclusive products? Because you're doing something incredible, but there's so much more that can be done. There's resistance, there's doubt, there's behind the scenes effort. I'm sure there's so much more. What is it that people are not seeing, and how did you work through that?
Yeah, definitely. I think just even listening to these, other incredible women on the call, there is just this like underlying kind of theme almost across all of our industries, even though we have very different kind of backgrounds and we're doing different things, inclusivity, caring, purpose. And I think, for us on the Cover Gal side, it has really been around educating people on why it's so important, to create inclusive work environments. And workwear is actually part of creating that. So if you think about it, if you're wearing men's workwear every day, all day, like how included do you feel in the industry in which you work? We're not even talking about the safety concerns and the health concerns, right? But we want people to feel like they're part of an organization. And earlier in the call, you talked about, workarounds with workwear. Well, CSA did a study of 3,000 women across Canada. And the crazy thing is that 58% of women are actually only using PPE some of the time because it's wrong fit. 38% of women are using workarounds. So they're actually taking engineered 5-point harnesses, cutting them at home, and resewing them. They're also resewing flame-resistant garments. So for us, a lot of the work that we do is just educating companies and organizations. This is not about fashion. This is about fit, it's about safety, health, and it's about making your employees feel like they're part of the work that they do. And it goes far beyond just even the workwear. We're talking equipment, bathroom facilities. Like there is so much that really kind of makes up a proper work environment.
And it does definitely snowball because it brings up so many more questions, like you're saying. And that statistic is just it's crazy to hear that that's how people feel they have to move forward. So thank you for bringing up these questions and pushing through that resistance. When it comes to hospitality, we are in an industry that is really really full. But it really is built on anticipation and emotional intelligence. And so, Sabrina, I want to ask you, when we're talking about that invisible load, how much of your work is unseen but essential when we're looking at hospitality?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'd say the majority of it definitely is the unseen part of what we're doing behind the scenes for sure. Um, it's crucial for delivering the exceptional and great experience that we want our guests to have. But it includes like a lot of other stuff like anticipating the needs of our guests and our members, also emotional intelligence, right? We want to make sure that we're empathetic and that we're meeting the guests' emotions and also creating a welcoming atmosphere for our guests and our members. And then there's also the aspect of conflict resolution, which does arise from time to time. And so we want to handle those complaints. We want to handle misunderstandings like in the moment, and we want to, troubleshoot that if we can and when we can. But also, we want to talk about the behind the scenes collaboration that happens, I would say constantly. We definitely plan meetings, but we also have to, deal with it as they come up. And so we have a lot of attention to detail. And then there's the feedback integration as well that we want to, be able to offer our clients.
I think it's so interesting, as a guest ourselves, after going out somewhere, you don't realize every little detail that goes into coming home and saying, wow, I had such a great time. And there's so much more than meets the eye. So I appreciate all of that unseen work that you do to put into that experience. And another thing that has so much work behind the scenes is real estate. So Shannon, I would love to know, because you were mentioning, with a real estate transaction, there is, so much emotion. You're balancing both market strategy with family life, especially when it comes to, your primary residence and those real estate transactions. What invisible decision making does leadership require of you and of your team that people just aren't talking about?
Yeah, so I would say the part of leadership that people don't see is the constant trade-offs. And I know in all of our industries, we all face the same thing. People see the growth, they see the strategy, they see the wins. What they don't see is many decisions that have been made behind the scenes that you're faced with every single day. Every opportunity runs through the same way in my head, right? Is it right for the business? Is it right for my clients and the team? And honestly, is it right for my family? I'm a mom, I have 2 boys, and I'm wired to build. I love momentum, I love growth, I love that real leadership. And I mean, it's about being disciplined enough also to say no, right? And there is the emotional side of it. When the market shifts or a deal gets messy, I don't get to spiral. My clients need calm. my team needs direction, and my boys need me to be present. So staying steady, that part of the job is super important, even when it's hard. And the question that comes back to me a lot is, am I building this business that supports my life and what I'm looking for? Because I want my two sons to see ambition, I want them to see drive, but I never want them to feel like they've come second. So for me, leadership isn't about balance, it's about alignment. And alignment means sometimes making hard choices every single day. I love what I do. I love what I do. So it's direction and making sure that I focus on purpose.
I think that is just like the golden question, of and all of us in this conversation have probably felt that more than once. And that's what we speak to on the Juggle is Real so often, is being able to um, be those overachieving people and seeing success in the ways we want to see it, but building it in a way that feels good and feels meaningful. So I appreciate how you're doing that for yourself, for your team, and for the community. Another thing that I think we all need is to feel supported and to feel seen, especially as we are building businesses and creating things and educating people when it comes to things that didn't exist before. Haley, I know that you understand building brands requires so much emotional attunement, and there's so much psychology behind it, both working with your clients as well as what people are seeing on the outside. What emotional labor exists in helping others feel visible? How have you experienced that?
Yeah, you took the words literally right out of my mouth. The work is way more psychological than people realize. People just assume, oh, they're just managing a social media page or we're managing content, but really we're managing identity. And, when a client hires us, or more specifically, when a woman hires us, she's trusting us with her voice, like talk about pressure. I've had, like I mentioned, really incredibly accomplished women say things like, well, is this too much? Or like, does this make me sound arrogant? Or am I bragging about this? And, it's our job to kind of walk them through and separate themselves from that imposter syndrome that, I know we've all experienced. And I think that's just kind of, unfortunately, still a component of being a woman in business. And there's another layer to this too. Like sometimes the emotional labor isn't just about helping them feel visible, but it's about helping them, feel safe and being able to, hand things over in their business. Especially speaking myself as a woman business owner, when you build something from the ground up, like that's your other baby. And, you pour everything into it, your energy, your sacrifice, identity, like so much goes into building this. So inviting someone else to shape and the branding or the marketing of your business, it can again feel vulnerable, right? And there's that like quiet fear of, well, are they going to care about it the same way I do, or are they going to get the message across exactly how I would do it? So yeah, a big part of our role is earning trust with our clients and reminding them that asking for help or having us come in and support you in this aspect of your business, it's not weakness, it's leadership. I always use the example, like if my sink is leaking, I'm calling a plumber. I'm not wasting time figuring out how to become a plumber overnight. I trust the professional to fix it properly. So, marketing and branding are really, really no different. And I think, especially for high achieving women, learning to delegate and trust experts is a huge growth moment. And, sometimes the emotional labor is holding space while someone, loosens the reins a little bit and realizes that letting supporting doesn't diminish ownership or um, you know, it really just actually strengthens it.
Something I am still learning every single day. And I
Right.
think many of us are the same way. I love how you put it, like whatever you're doing in your career, that's your work baby, and you hold it to such a high standard. And so I appreciate how you can support people and earn that trust and make them feel safe in these spaces. And sort of on that note, and what Shannon was speaking about earlier is really that women are mostly carrying more than one thing, right? We're operating in high performance environments, and many of us, and in this call, are mothers, we're caregivers. I will ask you individually, but I want to know each of you the same question. how do you define capacity in seasons where both work and life are demanding more? So I'll start with you, Sabrina.
Alrighty. Okay, so for me, capacity, it does shift, and I think that as we experience things, our capacity can grow. But I also think it's directly related to our emotional health, right, and our ability to be self-aware, and that which is very an emotion. It's something that's extremely important when we want to be able to have capacity, and knowing those things about ourselves, right? So I have a really good example here. I remember when my daughter was young. Um, we termed at about 9 p.m. we termed it the witching hour, and that was because that was when I knew I started to become really tired, probably a little more cranky. I needed to get some rest, and so now that's the term we use in our house is it's mom's witching hour now. So that was me getting to know that about myself, but also building capacity has come with maturity and experience, and testing those waters and kind of growing as a professional and as a woman and a mom and a friend and all of those things over the years.
I think we have the same witching hour, Sabrina, and I agree with you fully. Understanding it, really being aware is the first step. Sherry, you've spoken about how, people are caring for themselves. You experienced burnout and it led you to the solutions that now you've created. So how do you define capacity in those fuller seasons?
Well, after going through burnout a couple of times in my life, and pretty big burnouts, and I'm sure everyone else has had those kind of experiences, and you learn pretty quickly that that's not the way to grow or build or lead or do anything. You can't parent from an empty cup. You can't lead from an empty cup. And I really take seriously the fact that I'm in charge of my capacity. We all have the same 24 hours, and really taking control of my schedule, my habits. And it's easy, but it's simple, but it's not easy, right? You have to make those shifts in your life. But I find, and Shannon said something. I think you called it alignment. I call it harmony. It's the same thing. I don't want my child to ever think she's second, but I run a big organization that employs a lot of people, and so it really is about knowing what's important to you, your kids, your business, your this, your that, and making sure that they are in that daily list of what you want to get. And then the capacity's there. But I feel like if you're not going to put your life in control in your schedule, then you will always be running around feeling like you don't have enough time every day. So it's doable. Um, that's what I would say about that.
I feel like you really have your values in mind and you're making decisions based on what your values are and your priorities, which is very admirable. Haley, you're a mom. You mentioned you were raised by an entrepreneur. What did you learn? Do you have any examples, or how do you define capacity in those busy times?
Yeah, I gave birth to my daughter in 2022, and it was, of course, my biggest accomplishment. And as a self-employed woman, I didn't have the luxury of taking a traditional maternity leave, which is a whole other story. But so I made the decision that if the system didn't really wasn't there to support the integration of motherhood and leadership, that I would figure out how to do that on my own. So I brought her to work every day from the time she was 2 weeks old. Which again, I look back and I don't know how I did that, but I did. And, well, I know how I did it. It was my team, they really showed up for me in ways that um, I'll never forget. And they helped me navigate, that early motherhood while continuing to grow my business. And there was a lot of grace in that season, a lot of learning, a lot of redefining. And it was really transformational, I think, in, my personal life, but also in my professional life and in the organization itself. Um, and I guess what I hope that I demonstrated to them and to my daughter is that, you don't have to choose one or the other. And kind of echoing what Sherry said, like, you don't have to diminish your ambition to be a good mom, and, you don't have to hide or backburn your motherhood to be a strong leader, right? Like, I think it takes conscious effort and choice and a lot of hard choices, but you can do both. So for me, before having her, I was, go, go, go. Like, if someone needed me at any second of the day, I would always say, like, I sleep with my phone right here. So if you need me, call me anytime. Whereas now, like, my capacity had to change because I have a witching hour now too. I think that just comes with with motherhood. And so for me, it's now like what actually matters, what's sustainable, and most importantly, what example am I setting, for my daughter. She sees my passion. She sees, she knows the name of my team and she refers to them like family. And she understands that people depend on me and the work that I do matters to me and to other people. But she also is seeing me set really important boundaries, and again, just making that conscious effort to uphold those boundaries and, be present when I need to be present for my family.
The B word, the big B word of boundaries. I appreciate that you have set them and you're holding them, because it only allows you to show up in more better ways with your daughter and with your clients. I would love to hear from Alicia on this one. You are working in such a male dominated industry. You're currently joining us from PDAC, which is one of the largest conferences in the world. I'm sure you're surrounded by mostly men. Um, how are you defining capacity? And do you have any examples of how this has shaped your everyday?
Oh my goodness, I think we could probably have a session just on this question alone. But certainly, I think, for me, I always felt like I had to work 2 or 3 times harder to be seen, to be respected, to be, valued. And I was really trying to do everything. Like, and I think sometimes there is an expectation on women. If you want the career, you've got the family, you've got a spouse, like all these things that you have to be great at everything all the time. And I really tried, and I was doing it. And I feel like, Sherry, you and I have probably had conversations around this during that time. And at that time, I was not saying no, right? I was saying yes to everybody because I thought I needed to. And then I flew to Texas, and I was on a panel, and Randy Zuckerberg was the keynote speaker. So that's actually Mark's sister, and she's the author of a book called Pick Three. And I met her at probably the most, key point, I think, in terms of my journey, because, her and I spent some time around this book, Pick Three. And she said, as women, you think you need to be like the superhero of everything and be great at everything. But, the reality is it's not sustainable. You can do it right now, but it'll never last, right? It's not sustainable. Something will have to happen. And she said, you know what? Wake up in the morning and pick three. You have family, friends, work, sleep, and health. Like, wake up in the morning and focus on 3 things and do them really well. And then the next morning, do the same thing. So that was really, I think, put things into perspective for me, that I didn't need to be everything to everybody all the time. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I think, just listening to Haley around kind of like, building upon her comment around surrounding yourself. And I got advice early on from a general manager who said, Alicia, if you want to be the GM, you don't have to be the expert in everything, but you need to hire the experts in every respective field. And so I've really found that. And I think support system, whether it's work or family or friends, is absolutely important, because I think, all of us on the call wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for those support systems that are around us.
Absolutely. And I think that lesson coming to you through that book, Pick Three, I think that's something we can all take away with us right now. And it made me think of another book called Who Not How. Basically, like, who can you be supported by? Like, where are the who's that can support you in what you're doing and how you're building? And finally, I will bring this question to you, Shannon. Haley had mentioned how she used to say, I sleep with my phone. Anything you need at any time, just call me. And I had to laugh a little bit. But in real estate, I feel like sometimes you do have to be like that, because the deal is coming
Yep.
through. And especially, we've gone through some really big highs in the real estate industry. So how do you define capacity in those really busy seasons?
So you're absolutely right. And I agree with everything that all of you have said. It's been such a great conversation. But, for me, I used to think of capacity and as being how much I could handle. And Alicia, you mentioned hiring the expert, in different capacities. So, and I think that has been a big thing for me, and understanding that I don't have to be everything to everyone. I'm a mom, I'm a team lead, I'm an agent. I am so many different things to so many people, but at the end of the day, I can rely on great people that I have on my team, whether it's a buyer's agent, whether it's, an administrative assistant, but we're all here to work together and share in that load. And then again, obviously, we talked a little bit about boundaries, but I think that's a big one. Boundaries are a big one, and knowing when to put down the phone and when to prioritize your family time and work time and time that, maybe one of my team members needs from me, I think is a big deal. And I've learned balance over the years.
Yeah, it's a learned skill, absolutely. And sometimes we learn the hard way, but thankfully we are continuing to learn and having these conversations, understanding that we are sort of all in the same boat. You really do have to choose what is most important for you and go from there. Um, Before we close out, I do want to talk about this year's International Women's Day theme. The topic centers around give to gain. And that is the idea that when we invest in women, opportunities expand and systems strengthen. And you're all such incredible examples of that. So I've loved to ask each of you this question. And we can go around again once more. But what has giving made possible in your own journey? So it could be mentorship, collaboration, visibility, opportunity. What has giving made possible in your own journey and helped you gain? Would anyone like to start first? Haley, let's start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I love this theme this year. Immediately, again, I bring up my mom so much, but she is so, instrumental in my life and in my career. And I truly believe that, everything I know about business, leadership, ethic, integrity, all of it it started with her. And she really paved a path for me before I even understood that I would need to walk it. Um, and opened doors and exposed me to entrepreneurship from such a young age and showed me what it meant to really care about people. And I think that's been a really um, common theme that everyone's kind of discussed today is at the end of the day we're all human, and it's really, I think, important, and no matter what industry that you're working in, that you kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Um, so yeah, when I built TSS, that was kind of always a thought process. And her giving made my building possible, and so for me it's kind of generational now. And now I think about how it's my responsibility to kind of demonstrate that for my daughter. So I think I'm creating gain in a few ways. First, through like the culture here at TSS. As I mentioned, it was never about just being an agency. It was to create a workplace that felt different, and was meant to be built in more than just a transactional employment way. I want my team to feel like they are part of something meaningful, being recognized beyond their output, and have the business be flexible to support them in their real lives. And Sherry kind of touched on this, like each person's when they leave here, like they have their own interests and passions, and their family life is so different from the next person. So I'm always trying to be really conscious in how can I support you in a way that feels personalized and tailored to you, so that when you are here for work, you're able to perform and feel fulfilled and supported in your best capacity. So I really take great pride in my staff and my team here, and I really want to make sure that they're being fully supported in whatever way that makes the most sense for them.
Beautiful. I love that your mom has been such an incredible role model, and for you
Yeah.
to now be that for your daughter and the people that you're working with and your clients as well. Sabrina, how has giving made things possible in your journey, and how do you intentionally create gain for others?
Yeah, so I think that you can't gain without the give. And so I think that, in order for us to gain experience and gain insight and uh, we have to be able to give to those around us. And for me, I have a lot of opportunity to be able to give my skills as not only an entrepreneur with my husband and 363, but also as a social worker and a clinician. A lot of the team members that I work with are female, and so I do give them that opportunity to mentor with me, but I also gain a lot from learning from them as well. So to me, it's goes both ways.
Absolutely. I agree so much. Shannon, what about you?
Yeah, so for me, give to gain is deeply personal. I did, and I don't know if any of you knew, but I started my career in consumer electronics for over, I'd say 10, 12 years. A very male-dominated industry. I was often the only woman in the room, and early on, that felt very uncomfortable. There were moments where I felt underestimated, where I was questioned whether I truly earned my seat at the table. Now, I mean, fast forward when I moved into real estate in the GTA and then built my business here in Sudbury, I stopped trying to prove that I belong and focused on building relationships, strategy, and really consistency. And the truth is, I mean, I didn't do it alone. People gave me opportunities, they vouched for me, they shared insight and generosity. And I think that truly accelerated my growth. So now I'm intentional about doing the same thing with people that are around me, people on my team, and people that I care about. I make room at the table for other women and women that need perhaps a helping hand. I like to lend my voice, and if I can help someone step into theirs just a little bit faster, then to me, that's a gain.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note right now that thanks to you, we are having this conversation together, and you created this space where we could all come together, which certainly does fall into this theme of giving to gain. So thank you so much for all of that, Shannon. Alicia, what about you? Shannon mentioned me being in a male dominated industry, and I feel like for you, you are giving so much, and there's so much to gain there as well.
Well, I think, just thinking about what Shannon said, I think it's about using your voice. And I think for me, giving really started with me sharing my story and using my voice, right? I struggled with PPE that wasn't designed for women. I spoke up about it. And I can tell you, to this day, a lot of women don't use their voice and they don't speak out because of fear of, what will happen. So, for me, once I did start to share the story and over the years educating people, that visibility has obviously created momentum. It started Cover Gals, and now we leverage that platform to make women have that voice. So we try and, gain by building products now to make women feel like they're included. We also celebrate who they are and what they do to inspire and engage others. And I think, it really comes down to, when you invest in women in the safety, confidence, and visibility, that impact multiplies. And again, like Shannon said, it's about creating even other opportunities for women and empowering others, right? I always say, empower women, empowered women, right? Like it's just coming together and supporting each other. So certainly we have seen the impact of that at Cover Gals firsthand.
Absolutely. Yep. Empowered women certainly do empower other women. And Sherry, we will close with you. I mean, when we're talking about the collaboration you've brought, the opportunities you've allowed through Plan A, through StaffStat, I mean, I think it speaks for itself, but I would love to hear your take on it. What has giving made possible in your journey, and how do you intentionally create gain for others?
Thanks. I'd like to mirror what Sabrina said, is that there's no gain without the give. And whatever you give comes back to you over and over and over. And I truly believe if you want to build something special, something that is intentionally there to take care of people. I remember when I started my company, I wanted to be, I never really had a really strong, great leader as a boss in all of my positions, and so I had one lady and I was like, I'm gonna take that and go to the next level. And so I thought it meant being nice, and can anyone relate to that? So you're just being nice, but you're not making important decisions, and you're not doing what you need to do because you want everybody to like you. And I learned pretty quickly that that's a fast way to shrinking yourself and not giving anybody what they need. So I believe that the more we invest in ourselves, the more we can rise to being leaders, and that is when our reach is really there. You're giving mentorship, you're giving coaching because it's just natural, and you're giving the women in your organization the permission to shine as well. So I think we have to stop playing small as women, because when we play small, the women in our space play small. But when we step into that comfort of, hey, I'm doing something, and own it and invest in ourselves, we bring women up with us.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought in the nice the nice woman sort of,
Alicia's
stereotype, because
laughing
it's so
because
true.
I'm not nice anymore, and I'm sure you aren't either, but I'm kind,
It's
right?
and that is a mentor of mine. Did say that to be clear is to be kind, because when you are using your voice, when you are saying what is true and giving your opinion, to be clear at the end of the day is the best way forward. And sometimes it's not nice, but it is the most kind, because you're not, going around the bush. Everyone understands, where they fit in. And I appreciate that you're doing that every single day. And as we wrap up this conversation, I just would love to express my sincere gratitude to all of you. Thank you so much, each of you, for the work that you're doing and for the honesty that you brought here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for sharing your time, your insight, and your leadership in this space. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andryanna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I reflect on this conversation, wow, so much that I am taking away. But what stays with me is that leadership doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like just noticing what isn't working and refusing to normalize it. Sometimes it looks like building something that did not exist before, like carrying invisible labor without applause, but building on that. Sometimes it looks like generosity, giving first, trusting that shared progress strengthens everyone. This year's International Women's Day theme centers on the idea that when we invest in women, systems strengthen and societies thrive. And today's panel is proof of that. These women didn't just build for themselves, they built for teams, for families, for industries, for communities, for countries. And so I will leave you with this. Is there somewhere where you are seeing a gap, where you might be feeling some friction? What might be yours to build, even in a small way, even under your own roof with your family? Because building doesn't always mean launching something massive. Sometimes it means redesigning how you lead in your home. Sometimes it means mentoring someone quietly. Sometimes it means choosing collaboration over competition. Because when women build, everyone gains. Thank you so much for being here. If this episode resonated, please share with someone who could be inspired by this conversation as well. Make sure you're following, subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and please write a review if you're enjoying it. And I will see you next time on The Juggle is Real. Take good care.